In this workshop, we will focus on the skills you need to have a successful interview that gets you the job. It's good to know what to expect when you are interviewed and what the employer is looking for during that process. We will also consider reasons why people do not get hired and explore tips to help improve your interviewing skills. The interview experience itself can feel stressful, especially going through that process. Being nervous is normal. It's all right. Everyone gets nervous. One of the employer's jobs during the interview is to figure out who you are and whether you are the best fit for the job, and to see if you have the right skills to perform that job. Now let's talk about some of the things that they look for. First, as you can see here, do you have the experience and the skills necessary to perform that job? Second, are you dependable? Can the company rely on you to show up regularly for work on time? Next, working well with others. Do you get along with others in the workplace? Can you be trusted? Are you able to follow verbal directions? If the boss tells you a list of things they need, are you able to complete those tasks verbally given to you? Not only verbal, but written as well. Are you able to follow written instructions and procedures? The last one you see here is very important. Once you are hired, do you plan to stay? Before the interview, you need to think about how you will show the employer each of these traits so they know that you are right for the job. There are lots of reasons why people don't get hired for a job after being interviewed. Sometimes you are simply not the best fit for the job. Other times, there are things people do during the interview that lead them to not being hired. Knowing about some of the top reasons people don't get hired, you can ensure that you do not want to make these same mistakes. Number 1, you should never, ever show up late for an interview. Number 2, showing up to the interview with a poor personal appearance. It's important to be groomed and neat. Lack of eye contact with the interviewer. It's important to maintain eye contact. Not answering the questions clearly. It's important to answer them precise and to the point. The next one you see here, when being questioned by the employer, making negative comments about other employers in the past. Make sure that you do not make any of these mistakes when you are interviewed, and you will have a much better chance of being offered the job. Now we've talked about reasons people don't get hired. Let's look at tips for having a successful interview. Tip number 1. Make sure that you prepare for the interview. By prepare, I mean following this list of things. Research the company and the job that you are applying for. Know the type of business, how many people work there, and the positions available, as well as the responsibilities. It's important to be prepared. Know the name and title of the person you're meeting. Wear interview-appropriate clothes. It is important that you dress for success. As covered in detail in another segment. Arrive to the job interview 10 or 15 minutes early. And you see the last one here. When you go to a job interview, don't show up with just one resume. Have backup resumes in place. And a blank piece of paper ready to take notes. It's important to have a list of questions that you want to ask ready for the interview. These are some tips to help prepare you for a successful interview. We have another tip, as you can see here. It's very important to remember, when you show up to the interview, you are dressed and behaving as a professional. Take it seriously. From the moment you walk into the lobby, don't slouch. Sit upright, neat, and be prepared. It's important that you're aware, once you show up to the job interview, keep in mind, others are observing you to see how you act. It's important to remain professional until called for the interview. The third tip is very important. The first 30 seconds are key. From the moment you walk in the door, the company is already observing the type of person you are. Employers begin to form opinions about you within the first 30 seconds of the interview. If you do not make a great first impression, you may have already missed your chance at getting the job offer. Just based on your appearance. It's important in the first 30 seconds you make sure that you do these few things. 1. When you walk up to someone, make eye contact right as you enter the room. 2. Smile. Be polite, act like a professional, and take it seriously. The third one is dress appropriately and appear neat. Next, project self-confidence. It's important to demonstrate to the employer that you are a confident person. Tip number 4. Remember, the job interview is a two-way street. You are being evaluated by the employer, but the employer and organization are also being evaluated by you. That's why we call it a two-way street. You should think about any questions you have for the employer before you get to the interview. Like 1, why is this position open? Second, if you accept the position, what challenges might you anticipate? It's okay to ask questions. Third, request a copy of the job description so you know the duties, responsibilities, and tasks involved. Go ahead and ask. Ask anything you felt was not covered during the interview. This list of questions is important to keep in mind when you go in. Now, I'm going to show you a list of questions you should not ask. The first thing you should not ask is how much you'll get paid. The second thing, asking how much sick or vacation time you get. Asking what time you'll need to be at work in the morning and what time lunch is. Those are not appropriate questions to ask. The last one, how long do I have to work until I'm eligible for a raise? Definitely not an appropriate question. Tip number 5, practice answering common interview questions before the interview. These are some common questions that often get asked during the interview. Or you can go to your local Michigan Works that we have listed here, and they will be able to provide you some assistance and training to answer interview questions. Some of the questions you might be asked will include these. Tell me about yourself, or who you are. Next, you will often see, why are you applying for this job? Third, they will ask your strengths and your weaknesses. And finally, the company will ask you to tell them about your accomplishments. Having thought about how you would answer common interview questions will ensure that you are ready to give the best possible response to these types of questions. Tip number 6. As the interview is ending, make sure to ask about next steps and how you can follow up with the employer. Here are some questions to consider when approaching the employer during the interview. How long should you expect to wait before the hiring decision is made? The next one you see here, ask how the interviewer prefers you follow up, whether it be telephone, a letter, or an email. Ask what their preference is. It's okay. Last, if you are seriously interested, now is the time to tell the employer that you are interested in this job. Tip number 7. It's important to always remember to send a thank you note right after the interview. That thank you note may be emailed or a written letter. In that email, whether it's typed or written, genuinely express your appreciation for the opportunity to interview for that position. Also, whether you write a letter or type an email, it's important to emphasize that you really want that position and express interest that you're the right fit for that job. Anything that you can remember that came up during the interview is important to point out in that letter. Whether it's written or typed, be sure to bring up important points that were discussed during the interview so they can remember you. Tell them you're a perfect match for the job. Help yourself stand out to the company and remember who you are. Now that you've learned what to expect in an interview and some tips for successful interviewing, now it's time for you to begin practicing and preparing. There is more that you can learn and do to make sure that you are prepared for your next interview. If you would like to learn more information, contact your local Michigan Works office to find out what they offer.